Hey, and welcome to the Up Zone, where understanding politics is made simple. We are your two hosts. I am Tisha Waddell, former City Council representative for the 3rd District in the city of Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Mr. Elmer Floyd, former North Carolina House representative for the 43rd District in the state of North Carolina. Mr. Floyd, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Tisha. I want to continue to commend you on making sure that my title is correct and you don't have my title. I feel pretty good. Thank you again.
Absolutely. My pleasure, sir. My pleasure. Before we get started, I want to speak to a comment that we received um, on our Facebook page. And I am only sharing this because it is on our public Facebook page. But we got a comment from a constituent of Senator Val Applewhite a couple of weeks ago who was asking how she could get an appointment with Senator Applewhite. We did not see the comment right away. When we finally saw the comment, we did issue a response. She had done all of the things, Mr. Floyd, that I would say would be within the wheelhouse of a reasonable accommodation to try and get a response. She reached to her office, she reached out directly to her, even reached out on her Facebook post. So she was asking us how she might be able to get in touch with her. Short of giving somebody an individual's personal cell phone number, which I just won't do, um, because I don't know if they give that out. Our recommendation was that she may try to catch her before committee because you can speak to your representatives in Raleigh before committee, or also that she go up. Um, Depending upon how urgent whatever she needs to discuss is. She didn't give an indication of what the conversation was about. That she could go up 15 minutes prior and speak to her before session. She responded and said she didn't ever said she could write an op-ed because we all know that every elected official, even if they don't read the papers, they look for mentions of their name. So you made those recommendations. I want to say directly to this reader or this listener, we weren't recommending an ambush. Like we said in the response to you, you've done everything that would be considered reasonable at this point. So the only options left do feel a bit extreme. And I want to say, Floyd, it shouldn't be that difficult to get in touch with our elected officials. I can reach out to, seriously, like I can reach out to a representative at the United States level, at the federal level, and get a response back from your offices. I would expect that somebody who lives in my community still, I should be able to get a response back from. So, Senator Applewhite, if you're hearing this, please reach back out to your constituent. She is trying to get in touch with you. She's not trying to embarrass you. She clearly, based upon her response, she's trying to do everything reasonably expected or acceptable. Please reach out to her because she wants to speak with you. And short of all of the other mechanisms that we've recommended, Floyd, this is the only other thing I can think of is to make a personal plea on her behalf.
Well, teach one thing about politicians. You can have direct access to them during the electoral process. You can call my cell phone number prior to the electoral, during this process. Once I get elected, my cell phone number change. My
Yeah.
cell phone number change, and it's hard to reach me. But one thing that I can say to this young lady, if there's a political rally somewhere, Senator Applewhite can show up.
So
She can show up. I mean,
there's your opportunity. There's your opportunity. But here's the thing: like I've dealt with so many, and you too, Floyd. We've dealt with so many politicians, and They've I've never had an issue with being able to connect with or get in touch with my representatives. Even the ones that have take umbrage with me tend to reach back out to me. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's some y'all know it's some politicians that I pretty much let have it. And they still, if I reach out, will return my call. And I respect that. I respect that a great deal. So I would hope that as Wait.
Let me say this to you. No, I'm gonna say this to you. If you're an African American candidate and you get elected the first time, you don't have to communicate with your constituents because it's an electoral cycle that you are going to be elected time and time and time again.
Whether you do
So
it
I
in the
don't
name.
have to return your call. I don't have to return your call. You're going to elect me again and again. It's just like Senate Bill, I think, what, 354? When you want to take the money from the Civil War Museum and spread it throughout the community. Come on. When you look at me and you read that, you see what I have done. I have made an attempt to bring back money to my constituents, which you know that's not going nowhere. And so we buy that. So I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off,
You're okay.
but I'm sorry. I mean, you know, once I get elected, I don't have to do nothing, but that show up and smile and make statements to you that whatever.
Yeah. Well, I hope
I
she
mean,
calls.
look at it. I mean,
I hope she calls her constituent back, Mr. Floyd, because clearly this person is trying to get in touch with you. Again, she's not trying to embarrass you. She's not trying to ambush you. She just wants to
the
talk.
young lady need to have the young lady need to have a program to have a rally to have people together. Then she can probably speak to her before or after the rally.
Well, there you have it. Mr. Floyd, what announcements do you have for our audience today?
Well, again, the NAACP is going to have their Mother of the Year this coming Sunday at College Heights Presbyterian Church. And then don't forget now, if you want to have some food, music, and dancing, and I'm going to join the line dancing this weekend at the Dogwood Festival. I'm going to be a part of the line dancing.
You doing boots on the
So,
ground?
yeah, I mean, I can move a little bit. So that gonna be mine with the dog whip. But first, I got to find a park, and second, I got to call my attorney to see what's the fees going to be when I come for parking and where can I park. But I'm gonna be there now. You
Well, you
know,
have fun with
so
me, Mr. Floyd. You have a good time for me, sir.
I shall teach. And then Donald Hoffman is going to do his it's going to have a community conversation on his book on May the 3rd, and that's for 1:30 to 3 p.m. at Bordeaux Library on Village Drive. So those are the announcement, and I think you wanted to say something about Pope Francis.
Yes. So, as you all are aware, the Catholic Church has lost the pinnacle of their leadership recently. Pope Francis has passed away, and so most certainly, it's never a joyous occasion when a life is lost. So whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Catholic, whether you believe in this system or not, we definitely mourn the loss of this life, and we wait to see who the Catholic Church will install as their next leader, as their next pope. And so the world will be watching to see when the smoke turns colors coming out of the chimney stack, and we just wait with bated breath. Now, it was interesting because this particular pope seemed to be very progressive compared to some of his predecessors. And so I wonder
Yeah.
what the leadership of the Catholic Church will look like moving forward.
Well, my understanding that some of those persons that will vote for the new leader, was appointed by the Pope. So, with that in mind, you may see the same progressive type leader coming forward.
Yeah. Well, um, only time will tell. We shall wait with bated breath to find out how this all shall pan out. Mr. Floyd, do we have anything else that's going on in our community? We did talk briefly about the fact that um, we have an interim police chief who I just love. I just love, Assistant Chief or Interim Chief Joyce. I just think he's such a benefit to this community. I think he's such an amazing person to represent law enforcement, and his heart of service is just beyond measure. And Mr. Floyd, while I would love to see him be the actual next chief of police at the city of Fayette, I don't know if I want to see him deal with those personalities on the council, or to be run out, not run out, but to be prematurely ejected from law enforcement in the city of Fayetteville because of what comes along with that position. Like I would love to see him in that position, but I'd hate to see him leave.
Well, you got to, you have to look at it. He is a very polished police person, and he is also very personal. So I just think that he has the skill set and the community relation
To do an excellent job.
to do an excellent job as the a new chief of police. But my only hope is that although we are saying this, that he apply for the position. you know,
Yeah.
we can talk about this, but if he not opt not to apply for the position, then that's altogether a different story. But I hope that he will, because I believe that I've had a very, very good relationship with him, and seeing how he operate as a police person, in incidents and in my community. One is that wherein that one gentleman locked himself in his car after beating up the mother, the grandmother, and also a shooting incident, and also as it relates to noise, and just seeing him communicate. I think that he has the skill set to lead the police department. So I just hope that, first of all, I hope that he would apply. And then second, I hope that he would receive it. I understand what you were saying,
Yeah,
but
because
I think he has the
I would
potential.
love to see him as the police chief, but I just don't want to lose him in our community. And I've watched our community hemorrhage. I won't say hemorrhage, but I've watched us bleed out really good officers who I think were effective in their role. And I just,
Well,
I'm
what you have to
protective
look
of
at is that,
I'm protective of
yeah,
this chief.
but it's the city manager that hires the police chief, and
Well, Mr.
and
Floyd,
when you
I question the city man. I question some of the activities and actions of this current city manager. And I've never looked. This is the first time I've ever done that publicly. But I will say this: I question some of the activities and actions of this city manager. There's been a lot that's transpired. I have come to recognize that during my tenure, and I've probably said this or alluded to this, but I'll say it very directly now. During my tenure in office, I used to blame the mayor for a lot that I now recognize the city manager took part in. I now recognize that the city manager, and while his relationship with the mayor, there's a terminology that says politics make strange bedfellows. And so you can literally despise somebody and still have a common goal or purpose. And so I operated from the framework of thinking that this distasteful disdain that I perceived um, protected me from having to think that y'all are in cahoots against me. But when I stepped out of my position, I began to look back and I realized that two of the best politicians in the city of Fayetteville were people who were not elected. They were the city manager and the city attorney. So I don't
well,
necessarily fault the city council for what has transpired with our police chief. I give them I fault them to a degree because they hire and fire the city manager. And I don't know if they're being given all of the information that they need because I recognize now that a lot of information was withheld from me during my tenure by somebody that I employed.
what teach what you have to look at, when you in those kind of office, it is that you must always look at the majority, and on the council is six.
So
So
you just
your
have to keep
decision,
doing this.
you just have to keep six members of the council, you know, and we talked about this in programs before. If it wasn't for Kathy Jensen, then there was a discussion back several years ago about the city manager. But now, Tish, the city
Wait a
manager
minute,
has
Mr. Floyd.
received
Finish
a
your
doctoral degree.
sentence about if it wasn't for Kathy Jensen, because I'm about to correct that. Go ahead.
Well, you can correct me, but they
If it
wanted
wasn't
Kathy
for Kathy
Jensen.
Jensen, what?
Huh? I mean, they wanted Kathy Jensen vote to remove the city manager.
They had Kathy Jensen's vote to remove the city manager. I was in the
Well,
room.
I'm just saying. Well, I'm just saying that they may have had Kathy Jensen vote, but they didn't have 6 votes.
Okay, so let me say this, and I've never said this publicly either, but let's talk about it. They did have 6 votes in that room. And the reason that the city manager maintained his job is because, and see, this is why I say they were the best politicians, because I really believed that the city manager was going to bat for me on the things that I was trying to get done. I recognized when I left how quickly some of those projects moved forward, that that was not the case. So here's the issue. They had 6 votes, Mr. Floyd. The holdout votes were me. Let me tell you, the holdout votes were me, Yvonne Kinston, Courtney Banks McLaughlin, and Shaquilla Ingram. We were the holdout votes. So, with that being said, we had to pick an interim city manager. When we went to pick this interim city manager, I'm not going to get into the details of the conversation, but as we had this conversation about who would be the interim, I recommended a black female who at the time was serving as assistant city manager. I made good points and I got the council to agree, and we had the votes to make her the assistant city manager. You can check my story with Johnny Dawkins, because what I'm getting ready to tell you, he was the catalyst for. Johnny Dawkins leaned back in his seat when he realized that we were going to appoint this lady as the interim city manager, and he changed his vote. Had it not been for him not wanting this woman as the interim city manager, because Kathy voted to fire Doug. So I don't know where this
Well,
narrative comes from that she was
I'm
fired
just
when she
saying,
was not.
that's what
4
rumor
black
bill
female
provided to me.
were the ones
Okay,
who stood arm in arm to
no
protect the city
problem.
manager.
But that's what rumor bill provided to us when we talk about about that. But now what you have to look at is that Doug now has his doctoral degree,
And he can
and
quit
so he
now.
does have time. Yeah, I mean, when you look at that, he can go to any university and can be a expert in governmental relationship and teaching that.
And
So I don't think that.
he is an expert. You cannot take that from him. He is
Yes.
an expert. Any city manager who can remain in their position as long as he have and continue to drive the project forward in the manner that he did is an expert who a lot can stand to learn from.
Well, I agree with you, Teach, because the life expectancy of a city manager is nothing but 5 years. Okay,
And how long
five
has he
years.
been
He's
there?
been about what 10 plus.
Plus.
So I just look at it and think like you said, he is an excellent city manager and has a skill set. Now,
That few
when you
have.
say something about yeah, now you're saying something about one of your projects that I heard that you talk about all the time. I think that they're going to raise your storm drainage fee.
So
You know,
we did talk about that last week. But and again, and let me say this because I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. I think that the city manager that we have in place has a brilliant mind. I think he has a brilliant mind. And I think when it comes to being able to shape a narrative and sell a story, he most certainly could go out and be a journalist and reframe narratives and sell it to the masses in a way where he can shift ideology. He's a brilliant mind. So as we talk about this stormwater issue, I want everybody to remember that the city manager's role is to present a balanced budget to the council. In order to do that, he has to find money to be able to make up for the deficits that are existing now because the county has shifted the sales tax distribution. So, because the sales tax distribution has been shifted, he's got to make up these dollars. What other ways are there, Mr. Floyd, to make up dollars when you are trying to protect your council and insulate them from having to raise taxes?
well, one thing that I say to my people, I have to look at my fee category. I don't look at my taxes. I just look
Fees.
at my fee,
Because at
which
the
is
end
the
of the day,
same
fees
thing.
ended up on your tax bill and you don't even
Yeah.
recognize. You just wonder, well, why is this so high? But you don't realize that they've upped all these fees. So again, brilliant strategy. Brilliant strategy, but it's not necessarily about ramping up stormwater projects. It's about making up the budgetary shortfall.
Well, and we said last time it's only going to bring in a little over a million, less than $2 million. So uh,
So
I
you're not
say
going to
to the
ramp up
city,
any projects with $2 million,
yeah,
Mr. Floyd.
I know, but I think that the city, as it move forward, instead of having site drainage, that the city is going to have to look at their streams and change their stream or use some kind of canal system, as I've always said, to move water. You can't continue to have economic development and dump the water into these same small streams, in which it just so happens that it comes in that the water run off in 301. I don't know how it finds 301 so the water can run. I mean, of
Do
all the
you know many
places,
neighborhoods of color were built in low-lying areas? They were built in swampy areas. They were built in low-lying areas because that was where the land was the cheapest and the most affordable. So when you look at the runoff, it should be expected in those areas.
well, I know, T, but can't you put a coastal sack and turn the water, from my neighborhood? But anyway,
The
but
investment would
you know,
cost more than $2 million, sir.
I know, I know, but I just had my hand crossed that we could move some of this runoff water from our neighborhood. I mean, when you look at, as an example, when you look at Martin Luther King Freeway on the Ramsey Street, there's a little creek that runs on Ramsey Street through Fay Block Company, and then go back on Brinkley Street back there. When you get to Brinkley Street, it's about a 24 by 24 little creek that moves the water. So that area is automatically going to flood. But in other words, but when we look at economic development and infrastructure and moving of water and roads, you know, I want to ask you one question before I make the next statement. How's your two roundabouts coming?
Mr. Floyd, let me say this. They are getting ready to shut Rose Hill Road right before you get to the roundabouts and probably I don't know how they're going to redirect traffic, but they're coming along at a pace that I would say, I guess it's an appropriate pace, but it's just really, it's weird over here right now. It's
Okay, but
weird
let me
over
ask
here.
you now, out in the western part of the county, now, when I look at infrastructure, I see them widening roads in the western part of the county. And when it comes down to my community, I see them narrowing
Narrowing.
feeder street. I mean, I just can't figure it out. So what's going to happen in the future? I want y'all to make sure Hope Mill is going to outgrow Fayetteville as it relates to economic development because the infrastructure is being put out in the western part of the county. And for the first time, Tish, in a long time, I heard that the municipalities have met with FAPO and they get some,
Fayetteville
and those
Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, I
are,
think. Mhm.
yeah, which help design the infrastructure because
Mhm.
they want I-685 to come through Fayetteville and to connect with 285. And so when we look at all of this economic development, the city of Fayetteville is not getting any economic development per se, but we're waiting for them to do Rayford Road. But
Mhm.
if you look, they're constantly improving the western part of the community. In my community, which include Murkison Road, from Spring Lake, there's 6 lane, from Hardest, from the city limits to Hardest 4 lane, and when you get down to the heart of my community, they're gonna have 2 lanes. But what I like about it, they're gonna have trees and a grassy area.
Well,
Okay,
Mr.
I
Floyd,
mean that's the beauty. That's the beauty of planning how they do our community, and the rest of the community get economic development. I want to thank the city and all other municipalities that I heard for the first time. They have had a meeting with FAPO to get an understanding about future road projects in our community. So you on Murchison Road, get prepared for, get you some rakes and stuff, because once we plant these trees and greenery, the leaves gonna blow somewhere.
well, speaking of economic development, there's some advocates who are really pushing for the county commissioners to keep the downtown project, as far as the civic center is concerned, in the downtown footprint. Mr. Floyd, have we heard anything about this 1,000-page review?
No, we haven't. So I'm just wondering how this well, I guess I'm gonna say consulting firm or attorney, within a limited amount of time, was able to produce 1,000-page documents. I mean, for the members of the county board of commissioners to review. But the county board of commission, as you well know, allowed the project to move forward. But at the same time, they're also looking at the renovation of the Crown. Is it the Crown Center? There, and so because the non-ADA compliant. Well, you was an elected official.
I was.
That's that's a building out there. So what you gonna do? Tear it down because it's in non-compliance. Because if you keep the building, it has to be in compliance.
It has to be brought up to
So
compliance.
so I don't understand. I said to you before, and I showed you some beautiful pictures of the footprint of that building downtown. A beautiful That beautiful building downtown,
I
and I
still want to
also
know.
found out,
Go ahead.
that right across the street, not that far from there, someone owns a parking lot that, my understanding, that the county leases that parking lot from someone.
Would that be Jimmy Keith and
I'm
Kathy
not.
Jensen?
I'm not saying anything, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a pretty good. You come up with somewhere over $20,000 a year, but at the same time,
Would that
where
be
it
Jimmy
is
Keith and
located,
Kathy Jensen?
I'm not saying, but they are
Well, I
leasing.
do know
If
that
you
they
can go
own
and
a
look at
parking
public
lot in
record.
that area, and it is my understanding that at one point they couldn't do anything with it because Jimmy Keith was on the county board of commissioners, and it would have appeared as a conflict of interest. So I guess now since he's gone, it could very well be, and it's just business at this point because he's not
It's
on
his
there.
business
So,
piece. I mean, you know, do you think if I have
and I
four
like
hundred
Jimmy, so keep
thousand,
calling me Jimmy. I like Jimmy. I don't have a problem with
man,
that.
I don't blame him. So if I'm able to let that building stay there, uh, you know, and you said now that based on activities, the parking fee increase. Okay, the
Hmm.
parking fee increase. Now, I don't want. I'm coming right back to teach now, but you had a parking study. But I'm saying again, you still didn't put no elevator in that parking deck.
Hmm.
With your parking study. So what I'm saying, back to the civic center, the I don't see where it's going to jumpstart economic development. And if you're going to spend that kind of money, it should be where that you can jumpstart economic development and you can grow a community around it. But
Hmm.
to put it there, the footprint is just too small. And then on top of that, you're gonna go behind the county, behind the sheriff, wherein that you wanted to do a new county administrative office building. You're gonna put I think it's 11-story parking deck at $30 million.
And we
So
actually just
do you
got
think that?
a message on our on our Upzone page, and it's from Peter Pappas, and he said unless that area is used for other county business like sheriff's office or administration. And Mr. Floyd, it would make sense. I mean, now here's the thing. One of the things we talked about while I was in office was having all of these businesses in the downtown footprint that are not generating any revenue for your tax roll because they're all government administration buildings. But the reality is that's usually what the more centralized portion of downtown is. It's your government footprint, and then as you stretch out from there, that's when you get the other businesses that sort of fill in that area. So, Floyd, I think it's really weird. I think it's weird placement to have the jail, the courthouse, um, and then this civic center. I've always thought it was weird placement, but I do recognize that Vision 2026 had a vision and they have successfully
Mhm.
executed that vision. And so I want to point everybody always back to who was on the board of Vision 2026. And there's some names that we all recognize. There's some prominent members in the development community. There's some prominent attorneys whose names we recognize that were a part of this strategy all the way 10, 15, 20 years ago that we're seeing come to fruition now. So I don't know. It's a lot of people who are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that project does not move. But I want to know what was the catalyst for the pause on the project and what was in that 1,000-page report.
Well, well, you
Will it ever
know,
be made public?
I don't know will it ever be made public. I believe certain inserts will be made public.
Hmm.
There about the document, you know, itself. But apparently, 1,000 page has slowed down some of the county commissioner thinking. So there's something in that document. And so, what the chairman mentioned, as you know, we want to make sure that whichever decision that we make is the right decision. So what we have always said, you cannot bind new incoming elected officials
Right.
to old. So you can't, you can't bind me for that. I mean, many times it's just a rollover effect. But the counter to me that I seen is always they don't look at future growth. As an example, when they built the health department and the social service to build, no, yeah, social service and the health department, you know, there was one street that could have that houses are not that expensive. They left that street. And so they are deadlocked. They're landlocked there. It's the same way with the building over here. They just half do and do not look at future growth. I don't think, to me, I'll be honest with you, that's a good investment to place the building there. You cannot jumpstart, like you said, across the street. You got the county jail.
Well, and if we look at the project, the economic development project that the city initiated with the baseball stadium, it was intended to jumpstart all of this economic development, which we've not seen. And here we are, 5, 6 years later, and we've still not seen the level of economic development that was intended to accompany the baseball stadium.
Well, Tish, like I said, and I enjoy talking with him, but I just can't see how in the world you could let somebody tell you that I'm going to put 3 stories on top of 4 stories, and you don't put an elevator on the first 4 stories. But you coming back now, you're telling me that because of the economic crisis in the country now, although unemployment has declined, that we are unable to get the necessary funding to build that. But it does not prohibit, even if you carry them to court, is to put an elevator in there because I don't want to go to Planet Fitness to utilize the parking deck. So I say to you again, why don't the city put elevators? Just one teacher help. Just one to help. you know. But then again, we got this beautiful building coming downtown, $145 million.
With empty retail
And
space. with empty
Yeah.
retail sites.
And, yeah. And then again, you've already spent $35 million in tearing up the parking deck and putting the infrastructure in. So how you going to build this building that you have here with $105 million? I can't see it being $105 million. It's going to be more than that. So you might as well get ready for a cost overrun of 10 to 20%.
Well, let's talk about money, Mr. Floyd. The North Carolina State Senate has approved their budget. It now goes over to the House. Let's talk about some of the Fayetteville and Cumberland County specific items in this budget. And let's also highlight some of the things that weren't included that McKinnis and Applewhite wanted. So, what's approved in this budget, we see the rehab and reopen of the Veterans Home. That's been approved. We saw that the Genesis Firearm Accountability Act was rejected. I want to talk about that a little bit, Mr. Floyd. So that Firearm Act that was rejected, when I read it, just the overarching principle of it, I said, well, this makes sense. But when I got down in the weeds of it, I know why it was rejected. Because whenever you say that you're going to assign a level of fault to a gun owner, a legally law abiding gun owner whose weapon has been stolen, you're going to now assign the blame to them for any crime that is committed with a weapon that was stolen from them. You're going to have a hard time getting something like that because you're asking people to accept responsibility for something that they didn't have anything to do with. And I recognize that it's tied to whether or not you report the weapon as stolen. But if my weapon is stolen on Monday and I don't recognize it until if it's stolen at Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't recognize it until Monday at 11:30 in the morning, and there's a crime committed at Monday at 9:15 in the morning, and I have not reported the weapon as stolen until 11:30. I fall into a gray area where I may now be held accountable at the same level for whatever the crime is that was committed with the weapon. That was destined to fail. There was not enough. It was like that was rushed. There was not enough. It's good in theory, but there was not enough put into it to safeguard the rights of the person. I'm affected too. If you've stolen something from me, I'm affected too. So, Mr. Floyd, make that make sense. Is that making sense? What I'm saying?
It makes sense, Chief, but when you look
It
at
seems
gun
like she's
right,
throwing stuff at the wall, Floyd. Like she's just trying to do stuff to say, I did this.
well, Teach, you got to look at your base, Teach. And many times politicians looks at their base. And our base believe what you say, although you know it's non-productive. You know that.
Yeah.
But your base is so I mean, they're so amazed by your razzle and dazzle, about certain things. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's what a lot of it is based on your base and how you keep your base uninformed but informed.
Yeah. And I would love
And that
to see accountability around gun ownership. I would love to see that. And I'd love to see it with mechanisms that make sense. And so I hope that she won't just abandon this. I hope that as long as she's in office, she'll go back and she'll strategize this a bit more and button it up so that it's a cleaner bill that may be able to get some traction. But most certainly this wasn't it. So we
uh,
also go ahead.
no. You have to look at certain bills are just dead. Certain bills by certain legislators are just dead on arrival.
DOA. So
Okay,
here was another
it's
one
just
that was
dead.
DOA. She wanted to cancel the funding for Fayetteville Civil War Museum. That was rejected. She wanted to reallocate those dollars for mental health programs. Now, again, it sounds great in theory. Like you're saying, it sounds good, and it's definitely going to give you a platform when you go out and campaign again to make it sound like you were really trying to do something, but you knew this wasn't going to go anywhere. So that
How
was
many sponsors? How many? First of all, how many sponsors was on that bill?
none.
Okay, dead on
The
arrival.
last time I looked at it, there were no, and remember I asked you about that on our last podcast. I was like, don't these bills typically have more than just one name associated? It was just her. But
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. It's like and this is the mark of a smart politician. So I need for everybody to know when we're talking about this, I have to give Senator Applewhite credit for being a strategic politician. Because what
Yes.
this does for her is it gives her speaking points down the road to say, I attempted to do this, I attempted to do this, I attempted to do this. And they all sound very noble, but she knew going in they weren't going to go anywhere. So she spent her time on issues that were not going to go anywhere versus really trying to work across the aisle to find ways to bring resources and to resolve problems in our community.
Well, Tish, like I said to you, certain bills by certain politicians are dead on arrival, and the Senate is different than the House. You may be able to get a bipartisan bill introduced, but on the Senate side, the majority of their bill first go to rules. Okay. In the House, they usually refer them to committees. Okay. But in the Senate, it had to be pulled out of rules and then signed to a committee. But you can tell, I think maybe the latter part of May, when I think it's the crossover date, May the 8th, I'm not mistaken. It's what bill in the House or the Senate cross over to each other chamber to be heard and possibly heard during the short session. And what you do at the end of the session, after May the 8th, I think that's what it is, you go and look at this, go and look at the Rules Committee on the Senate side and see how many of those bills is in their parking deck.
Mm-hmm. And
That
that'll
means
tell you
that,
where they're going. Now, here's
yeah.
an interesting one, Mr. Floyd. So, Senator McInnes has moved a bill forward to legalize betting on horse racing, and he's out of Moore County where they've got the horses are the thing in Moore County. That's pending. It's not been rejected. It's just pending. It's not in
But
the
it's in rules, though. Most likely it's in rules. It's in
say it again.
rules. And you had to be real keen to get it out of rules to be heard. And you
Hmm.
have a very short window to run it through the various committees because the committees meet once a week. Now, however, they can have multiple meetings based upon space availability.
Hmm.
Uh, but that I'm gonna say whenever crossover date is done, they may run 100 to 200 bills during that day.
Hmm.
So
The Senate.
you will have adjournments, temporary adjournments, to
Okay.
allow another new calendar agenda to be prepared.
Okay. So the Senate's budget also has some approved line items for Fayetteville State. So Fayetteville State will be getting more money, more money, more money. They're going to be getting $500,000 in sports gambling tax revenue to support athletics. Their tuition promise, their NC promise tuition plan increases the price of out-of-state tuition from 2,500 to 3,000. But the in-state NC promise rate remains unchanged, and 20.75 million allocated over the next 4 years from 2027 to 2031 for the renovation of the Butler building. $6.6 million to finish the building of the $63 million new College of Education building. And then Connect High School to Community College has been approved, which means that FTCC is going to be one of two community colleges to participate in a $3.75 million seamless skills initiative. More
Let me
prosecutors.
ask you a question.
Mhm.
Let me ask you a question. Was that put in and agreed by the Cumberland County delegation?
I don't know the answer to that question. And I'm not gonna
That
lie
means
and
that
make
somebody
something up.
that means that somebody has a good relationship with the
With
Board of
people up
Governors.
there already.
I'm just saying, T. I
Listen,
mean, they got
listen,
to have a
and
good
I
relationship,
passed all this.
and have a relationship with the Board of Governors.
Absolutely.
Okay, which talk with the General Assembly. They say these are the monies that we need at this university. But what you
Absolutely.
had to look at is that when the Democrat was in charge for 144 years, you look at the HBCU and how much did they grow doing? They grew, but
Mr. Floyd,
not to.
listen, because you can just look at FSU under the leadership of Daryl Allison, Chancellor Allison, versus the leadership that was before him, and look at the growth of the university. Everybody was pissed about his relationship with Republican administrators, but you can see how that benefits this university.
Well, Teach, let's just look at that as an example. Now, we are going to draw the districts in 2032. That means that the Republicans are going to control the General Assembly until that time. So when it comes down to 2032, they are going to draw the districts again. So vision wise is that the relationship that the chancellor has is going to grow because of the growth within the Republican Party. Whether you like it or not, he knows how to work across the aisle to get the things to help his university grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was glad as a legislator that I was part of that growth there for the university.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you must do as a legislator. You know, three things that you look at as a legislator. You look at your constituents, your conscience, and your caucus. You don't put the caucus first and then your constituent last.
Absolutely.
You don't do that.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
so
lastly,
that's why I feel.
look, lastly, let me just make this last point about this Senate budget. The Cumberland County District Attorney's Office has been approved more prosecutors, 6 new prosecutors, which brings us up to a total of 31 versus 25. So there's money in the Senate budget for Cumberland County. Now, what happens next with this budget, Mr. Floyd?
Say it again. I didn't hear you.
What happens next with this budget?
Well, they're going to go to the House where they're going to be rejected.
And then what?
Huh? And then there'll be a conference committee appointed, and you have members from the House and the Senate to hammer out the differences between the two budgets. It's like when I was there, I was able to get a judge for our community. Okay, but it was at a point wherein that if I did that, then one of the candidates would have been shifted out of their district. So I opt not to do that. Yeah, you see. So that's what is going to take place. Now you can but you can talk about corporate taxes, you can talk about pay increase, health care, you can talk about education. You can talk about increases for highway patrol and prison department, but it's going to boil down to the conference committee. And to be on that conference committee, sometimes you're able to make some insertion, in the change of that budget. If not, you may be able to do it with a technical review. But bottom line of it is that once that conference committee is set up, you can talk, you can get all the airtime you want, all the air until that particular person that chaired that meeting say that enough is enough. And you have 5 persons that can call for the question that will cut off the debate. Or prior to that, the speaker will talk with both leaders and say that we are going to let this bill run for 3 to 4 hours, and after that time, we're going to call for a vote. But you can get airtime to, which is beautiful. Which is beautiful. That's the beauty of being a legislator, is talk on a conference report.
Because it gives you an opportunity to create your sound bites.
Yes, beautiful. Beautiful. But when you don't know, Tish, when you don't know, and that's what we try to do here, is to get the people to look at things prior to them and see how productive their legislators are in Rock. And what you do as an individual at the end of, I think it's May 8th, we talked about look at and see how many bills were moved by your legislators and how
Mhm.
much money was was brought back, whether you like it or not. The Senate got the budget first this time, and I mean I think their budget was about $1 billion less than the governor. But keep in mind, I don't care how you look at the budget, they're gonna put more money in their rainy day fund because it's proven to be successful. Because of the incident in Western North Carolina, if they didn't have that $4.75 million, they would not be able to support. I think they gave them about 1.5 billion, or have offset money for federal dollars that went into Western Carolina. So
Yeah.
it I'm sorry, but that's the process.
And we are a
That rain.
fiscally responsible state. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah. Now the thing about it, see, we must have a balanced budget, and so you must be creative. Just like you mentioned, I think you mentioned that Fayetteville State got 400 that money for sports betting,
Hmm.
and that went to those colleges to help with their athletic program. Unfortunately, we're not the University of North Carolina, when they paid the football coach $50 million.
Which, by the way,
Okay,
Mr. Floyd, next year UNC is going to be playing in Ireland. They've been invited to play a football game in Ireland.
but that's what I'm saying. I mean, when you got
The big
when
bucks.
you can pay the when you can pay the court $50 million and $30 million signing, okay. But Fayetteville State can't do that. Fayetteville State, I mean, your athletic programs is based on student tuition. So this sport betting would allow Fayetteville State to get some of that money to help grow their athletic program. And so, not that I like the gambling part, Chief, but ever since I was a little boy in Rocky Mountain, there was a little raggedy house that played numbers. The house
And they had
the
the
house
numbers
should
up for
be the
sale.
house should have been condemned. It should have been condemned because you see the chickens up on the house and you can look through the floor and see the chicken. It should have been condemned. So they were doing a betting when I was a little boy.
Yeah. Well, you know how I
So
feel about it. I'm not even gonna rehash how I feel about that. But the last thing that I do want to mention, Mr. Floyd, is this conversation. We talked about these town halls where our federal elected officials were not coming to these town halls. Well, Representative Richard Hudson did show up to a town hall, and the headline said, Representative Richard Hudson shrugs off Doge concerns in town hall. So, Mr. Floyd, let's just talk about the fact, first of all, that he did show up. The way that this article is written is so funny to me because it sort of gives the impression that it was an interesting town hall because you've got people on the phone and there's this technology barrier that's preventing a seamless conversation or exchange of thoughts. What do you think about this article?
well, one thing that the speaker asks his members is not to participate in town hall meetings.
So the fact
You
that
know,
Representative Richard Hudson participated says something.
yes. I mean, but it wasn't impersonal now.
Hmm.
It was okay. You see, so you're not really facing the people like it
But are
has
you
been
gonna
in the
show up
past.
somewhere where you know they're just trying to set you up for the okie doke, Mr. Floyd? I mean, be
Well,
honest. I'm
well,
I, I
you
like
know,
I'm argumentative, so I'll probably show up because by nature I like to argue my point. So I would probably show up because that's my character. But for somebody who that's not their thing, they might not show up.
well, Chief, like I said to you before earlier in the conversation, once some of us get elected, we don't have to do anything else.
Do you think that Richard
And
Hudson
that's
falls
why
into
I
that
say
category? Go ahead.
That's why I favor, that's why I favor, term limits. Just like with the governor, you can run two consecutive terms and you must step down. The president, two consecutive terms. And so I think that the House and Senate, both national and state, should have term limits
They
of,
should
I'm just
definitely.
told that 10 years in the House and 10 years in the Senate, which would allow a turnover. Like when you say Phil Berger, I think he's been up there for, I think, 24 terms,
That's
and then the
crazy.
Senate Pro Tem 10 ever since 20. I forgot what it is. And so some people right now is looking at term limits as it relates to the Senate Pro Tem and the Speaker of the House. But I think that you should have term limits of both. That should be five. I mean, five
And they
terms, which
also
is
should
equal
not
10.
get health insurance for life.
Well, they had to, in many instances, there's a portion of the pay. You pay a
They should
portion
not.
of it.
They should not get health insurance for life. I said what I said because you have veterans who can't get quality health insurance for life who have served 20 years in the military. I can go serve a term in Congress and be insured health insurance
Oh
for the
yeah.
rest of my life.
I mean, that's how they do that because who? They in charge.
And they make the rules. They make the
They in
rules.
charge. You know. But if you're a member of the North Carolina House, as an example, it's politically suicide that you raise the $14,000 a year salary, although you're a full-time legislator.
And
Okay.
$14,000 a year is meager for the work that is done. I can agree to that, and I think anybody in this community who does not understand the value of making sure that we are paying people for the work that they do, that's unfortunate because I think everybody should be paid adequately for the work that they do. But some of these politicians don't deserve to get a paycheck because they're not doing nothing, Floyd. Give them
Well,
their
it's
mileage,
just an honor.
have them show up. They're not
Come
doing
on, Teach. Why I can't be a seat warmer? I mean, you are taking away. I know we're about ready to close out for the day, but
it.
why I cannot be a seat warmer and
Clearly you
receive
can.
my money?
Clearly you can, as long as you do enough to be able to get you some good headlines so that when you run again, you can say, I did this, this, I tried to do this, this, and this, and they just wouldn't let me do it.
Yeah, yeah, I could say that, but I just love to just get my paycheck and smile. I
Show up
think
and
I got a
smile.
beautiful.
And
I
get
I think,
invited to the party.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And your delivery is. But as we close, Teach, I just want you to go back and look at Fayetteville State and what it's receiving, and on the Senate side, we voted against the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And without fail, it goes without saying that when you can see this progress and you see people vote against it, you understand that this is really all politics for them. Mr. Floyd, what would you like to leave our audience with today? I love the fact. First, let me say thank you to Peter and Yvonne for talking to us during the program. I'm loving seeing these comments pop up. It is fueling engagement, and I just really appreciate you for that. So thank you, Peter Pappas. Thank you, Yvonne Kinston, for tuning in and for speaking up. We appreciate you because, Mr. Floyd, how often do we have people in the community tell us, I love listening to you guys. I love listening to you guys. We're tuning in. We're learning so much. If you love listening to us, talk back to us. We love listening to you too. So talk back to us. We appreciate that. What you want to leave our
Well,
people
Teach,
with?
just remember, Teach, as I always say, if that dog will bring a bone about you, truly, he will carry one away.
Yeah.
God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to tell you guys, stop being afraid to speak up and speak out. Listen, I can tell the truth and still love you. And I can tell you the truth in love. I can love you and not like what you do. And we ought to, when it comes to the political process, we ought to be able to separate our personal emotions for whoever or whatever we're talking about and be able to factually present information in a manner whereby people can truly choose and decide what they want to do. So again, we exist to make understanding politics simple. That's why we are the up zone, understanding politics. This is the zone where you can understand politics and we try to make it simple. Mr. Floyd, with that being said, I want to encourage people to remember that politics is not life, that we all need to be connecting. We need to find our people. We need to connect with our people so that when these politicians disappoint us, which inevitably they will, when they make policies that harm our communities, because inevitably they will, we still have a network to fall back on where we can support each other so that we can make it through the hard times that they create for us.
And don't forget, Tish, July is the time that the city council is open for filing.
And that's what it is. So like, share, subscribe, and follow. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And look, we'll catch you on the next episode. Yeah, Mr. Floyd?
I hope so, Tish. God bless you.
God bless y'all.